Jeanine Pirro.
She's the outspoken host.
Judge Jeanine Pirro is dominating the headlines right now.
This is the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome, everyone, to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. I hope everyone's enjoying their day so far. It's a wonderful day here in New York City, and always we are armed and ready to serve justice with all my great listeners here on the Red Apple Audio Network. Big week this week. A lot of stuff happened, a lot of it not good. The former president of the United States and the president-elect was sentenced by a local state judge hell-bent on convicting Donald Trump on a alleged felony that had no basis in law or in fact. And he allowed the audio recording so that his voice could forever be on tape, with him saying, I sentence you on 34 felony counts to an unconditional discharge. What a mess, folks. What a mess. The president did everything he could to delay sentencing. The Supreme Court did not get involved. They didn't have the spine to get involved when they absolutely should have, given the fact that, this was a case that had no basis or crime in fact. It had a verdict sheet where the jury didn't even have to say what crime they convicted the former president and president-elect of. And it was all a leftist conspiracy by Trump-hating individuals to lock Donald Trump up, make him a felon so that he couldn't defeat Joe Biden in the presidency. But as you know, and as we all saw, 75, 78, whatever it was, million Americans said nonsense. The real jury in this case, as Donald Trump himself said, was the American people. They watched the trial and they thought that it was nonsense. And so they elected him president. And you know what? You cannot underestimate the fact that their, warfare and lawfare and their effort to destroy Donald Trump was one of the reasons that people voted for him, because the American people are essentially good people. And so the leftist lawfare ideology, the Hitler that Donald Trump is supposed to be, is on his way to become the 47th president of the United States, with no real sentencing other than to make it final that he is a convicted felon. I will predict here, folks, that case will absolutely be reversed on appeal. There is no basis for it in law or in fact. And what that does is it reminds the American people that when you play around with the law in order to indict and convict and lock up a political opponent, you're playing with the emotions of the American people, and they don't like it at all. Which leads me to the second negative story this week, and that is the fires out in California. Again, it's the liberal leftists who were responsible for this. The government messed up. The infrastructure was messed up. They ended up sending out alerts and then telling people to avoid the alerts. On the one hand, they told people to evacuate, and 3 minutes later they would say, no, don't evacuate. And then they had a press conference where they said, oh, there's no human being who is sending out those messages, so that none of them have to take responsibility for the fact that these evacuation alerts are inept and that they are incompetent. And folks, I don't have to go very far in telling you that someone's at fault for there not being water in a freaking fire hydrant. Give me a break. Anyway, folks, today we've got some great guests. We've got a woman by the name of Joie, and her name is Joie Rucker, and her name is spelled Joie. You may, if you're a woman, have some of her clothes. She makes clothes for women and children. She makes car seats and strollers. She's an entrepreneur. She's a resident of California, folks, and she doesn't know if her house is burned down because she can't get there. She has no idea. And she is a lady, I will tell you. She is someone who is not looking to criticize, but is desperate for answers. And we also have Michael Davis from the Article 3 Project, who will talk about why this sentencing went forward and what it means for the 47th president. And that's my opening statement here on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. And up next here on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show, entrepreneur, a manufacturer, designer, Joie Rucker coming up. What is she going through right now in California?
Now it's time for Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Here's Judge Jeanine.
Hi, I'm Jeanine Pirro, and this is Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. As we watch California try to survive the incredible fires that have destroyed so much of the state, we're talking about the fact that we can't rely on the government. And the same is true for your money. If you think the government is protecting your money and your valuables, you're wrong. You've got to step up and take charge. And that's why Colonial Metals Group is just what you need.
It's the Judge Jeanine Show. This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome back to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. Joining us now is an entrepreneur. She's a designer. She's a manufacturer. She is an incredible woman. Her name is Joie, Joie. Last name is Rucker. I'm sure you've seen her clothing label on women's clothes, children's clothes. And what blows me away, Joie, is you also have done strollers and car seats. But folks, Joie is on today, not because she is this incredible designer and entrepreneur, but because she is a resident of California, and I thought would be someone who could give us a sense of what's going on in California. So please join me in welcoming Joie Rucker to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. Okay, Joie, talk to me. Where do you live and what is happening?
Well, I live in a part of Malibu called La Costa, and it's really kind of a low-key part of Malibu. And we live on a hill looking over the Pacific Coast Highway. And our neighborhood has been devastated.
Really?
I would say, I'm guessing, because I haven't been able to go back into the neighborhood since the evacuation, but I'm guessing that 75% of the people in my neighborhood lost their homes.
Oh, my God. Let me ask you a question. And I don't want to interrupt your narrative, but I just want to try to get at the beginning of this. When did you first know, or instinctively or from the government, that something was awry? When did this start breaking in your mind?
Well, the city of Malibu sent out warnings, and we've been getting warnings literally every other day from all of the utility companies, and most of the people that live in my neighborhood have generators, so we're aware that our power and all of the utilities and everything can be cut off at any time. But the city of Malibu actually did send out warnings in advance. It's just that we get warnings every other day, so it's hard to know when they are real. Interesting. To be honest.
Yeah. So you get warnings every other day. And, that is also, it seems, a continuing problem as recently as today, where there was a press conference and they were saying, well, it's not man-made that these warnings are going out. It's not human error. It's like they're blaming the machines or something. Yeah. Can you clue me in on that?
I mean, I don't understand it. I really, our governments are really messed up. Like the whole infrastructure of our state, everything that has been happening, and it's been going on for years. I'm a native Californian, and I grew up in Northern California and moved to LA for work. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I've seen it my whole life now. It's just the things that are supposed to be done aren't getting done. And the things that we pay for, we don't get. And we just keep paying more and more and more. And our society is falling apart. That's how I feel, really.
Well, the sad part is that it's still going on. They have, in addition to, these warnings from the utility companies, that they're also sending out evacuation alerts and then saying, ignore the last evacuation alert. How do people even know what to do?
Yeah, it's hard. And so you have to try to, well, what I do is I try to, have as much information as I can. And I look at a lot of different information sources so that I can try to suss out what the reality is and what needs to be done. For me, I packed up everything that I could, left everything open so that the fire people would have a chance to help. And, we're so grateful for all the firefighters that have arrived from all over the country. But at the same time, I see my neighbors, my close neighbors that I love, and they've lost their homes.
Have you lost your home, Joie?
No, I'm not yet. I mean,
do you know?
Now, well, the last I heard was a couple days ago, and somebody sent me a photograph where my house had been, part of the landscaping had been burned, and maybe some other stuff that I couldn't see because it was just a snapshot. But all of the houses around me and behind me, all my close neighbors have lost their homes completely. And I don't know what state my house is in, and I won't know until I get there,
Well, that's the sad part. I mean, the anxiety that you must have. You can't get there because the roads are closed. What is it?
Well, they want to keep everybody out of the way so that they can, do what they need to do. And also the power and the electricity is shut off. So there wouldn't be a lot that I could do, even if I could go at the moment. I'm just staying out of the way. But you're right. I mean, the uncertainty is it's terrible. It's terrible. It's awful. I've seen photographs and video that people somehow got and shared. But the truth is, there's nothing you can do. What are you going to do?
Joie, I want to share something with you. When I was in college, it was a long time ago. There was a hurricane and it brought a flood to my neighborhood, and there were no internet at that point. And the police just came down with bullhorns and said, everyone evacuate. And I remember the one thing that we didn't take, because it was so long ago and we didn't have the benefit of hearing it from other people, were photographs. And, we didn't have, the cloud and all the other stuff. And, we missed all that stuff. And I remember, I was such a jerk at the time. I took my skis, I was big into skiing, and so we're leaving the house. My skis are on top of the car. My mother's got the French poodle in the back, and my sister, we laugh. But now as I think about it, my God, what do you take? What did you take? What did you take?
Well, I took everything. I have a little kind of a prayer alcove and all of my mementos that I keep there. And I took my meditation mat. I didn't bring my surfboards because I didn't have room for all of them. But I have seen a lot of surfboards on people's cars. And I took some paintings that my husband did, and I had all the photographs and, essential things already packed. And you learn when you live in a place like we live to have boxes ready. I call them our go boxes, and they're just there. They're there all the time. So we were pretty prepared that way.
I think that the fact that this isn't over yet, and the fact that things are still getting messed up with evacuation alerts, I want you to listen, if you would, to some sound of the governor responding to a resident like you in California.
Governor, I live here, Governor. That was my daughter's school, Governor. Please tell me what you're going to do. I'm not going to hurt him, I promise.
I'm literally talking to the president right now to specifically answer the question of what we can do for you and your daughter.
Can I hear it? Can I hear your call? Because I don't believe it.
I'm sorry. There's literally, I've tried 5 times. That's why I'm walking around to make the
Why
call.
is the president not taking your call?
Because it's not going through. So
Why?
I have to get cell service.
So let's get it. Let's get it. I want to be here when you call the president.
I appreciate it. I'm doing that right now. And it's to immediately get reimbursements, individual assistance, and to help you. I'm devastated for you. I'm so sorry, especially for your daughter.
Does that frustrate you?
Yeah. I mean, I find our government very frustrating. The people that live and work and create businesses, and the moms and the dads and the people who work every day and pay taxes and pay property tax and pay and pay and pay. And when the time comes, there are no answers and there's no preparation. I mean, I don't understand it. It's not acceptable. And I think people need to be held accountable. I just think that it's not okay the way things are right now.
You know, the issue of a mayor being out of the country, a governor who can't even get through to the president. It makes you wonder whether or not, in light of the most recent election of the president, whether or not people are fed up with the liberalism, and the fact that it's just not working, that, we've got these problems that are being interfered with because of ideology, as opposed to, in maybe the 50s and, where people said, just get it done, do it right. It's like a different mentality now. It's like, are we hiring the right people? That kind of thing. It's got to be frustrating for you.
Well, living in California for so long, my entire life, basically, I'm frustrated because I don't feel like my voice is heard. I don't feel like there are pragmatic solutions. When things get promised, they don't get followed through. I'm very upset, but all I can do is try to.
You are a very reasonable person.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do know that I'm feeling really good about the changes. And I think that, sometimes people have to hit a wall before they realize that they're going down the wrong road.
Anyway, Joie, I want to thank you for joining us. I wish you, Godspeed. And I hope that your home makes it. And I hope that I know what it's like. People in your neighborhood have lost their homes. I remember when we came back to my home, which was condemned from the flood, there were a lot of changes in the neighborhood. A lot of people's lives were forever impacted. So I thank you. And I hope that at some point we'll be able to reconnect and find out that there's good news.
Thank you so much, Judge. I really appreciate it. And hope I get to meet you someday.
I look forward to it. Joie Rucker, thank you so much. An entrepreneur, folks, someone going through hell right now. Anyway, up next here on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show, I will be speaking with Chief Counsel for Nominations for the U.S. Senate Committee on the Judiciary Article 3 project, Mike Davis.
This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome back to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. Joining us now is the former Chief Counsel for Nominations in the U.S. Senate Committee on the Judiciary and the present head of the Article 3 project, Mike Davis. Join me in welcoming Mike. Mike, I appreciate you jumping on this morning. None of us really thought that the sentence would actually go through, and the sentencing of the 47th president. We found out right at the beginning of January that Judge Merchan was not going to just let this lie in limbo, and try as he might, the 45th president and soon to be 47th president of the United States was eventually sentenced by a Manhattan State Court judge on his conviction of 34 federal counts. Now, you have commented, and I saw it, on the Supreme Court and their refusal on the night before the sentencing Thursday night to get involved in this. Why should the Supreme Court have stopped the sentencing, Mike?
Well, the Supreme Court should have stepped up and stopped this unprecedented case, because the Supreme Court back in June said that the President of the United States is immune from criminal prosecution for his official acts. So how the hell can a president be immune from criminal prosecution, but not from criminal sentencing?
Yeah. Well, I think, it's a combination. And I think you say something like it's time for the Supreme Court to put on their big boy pants. I think I saw that on X, which made me laugh because I know you. But the Supreme Court is a court that, for the most part is very, it relies on formality and procedure. And I'm not so sure they like getting involved in interlocutory appeals and getting involved in the middle of cases. So were you really surprised?
No, I mean, I'm surprised that Justice Amy Coney Barrett has proved to be such a weakling, because you had four of the conservative justices, Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, my former boss, and Kavanaugh, who would have granted the stay. And here's the issue. Again, this is so much bigger than Trump. Are we going to go down the road where a local prosecutor and judge can put the president-elect of the United States in prison 10 days before he's supposed to be inaugurated? Now, this corrupt, partisan, dangerous Democrat Manhattan judge Juan Merchan says he's not going to put him in prison, but we're setting a precedent here, right? It's ridiculous because, again, the Supreme Court ruled in June that the president is immune. And when you're immune, that means you don't have to go in through the process. You don't have to go in through sentencing. Why the hell should President Trump have to spend his time preparing for this sentencing hearing for Judge Merchan instead of preparing to be the president of the United States in 10 days? Yeah.
And the transition, which, as you well know, he's been involved in since, the minute after he was elected. I mean, I don't think any president has worked as hard as President Trump in terms of making sure he's got a team ready to go, on January 20th. But, the precedent that you refer to, Mike Davis, is a serious one. And it is a signal that any local DA like Alvin Bragg, who I, as a former DA myself, don't think he is deserving of the title, can make a decision to start a political prosecution, for which there is absolutely no basis. And the amazing part of this is that it was a misdemeanor that had been barred by the statute of limitations, that they came up with some federal statute over which they have no jurisdiction, and bootstrapped this case to make it a felony. And in the end, it wasn't even a crime, and the jury didn't even know what they were convicting the president of, other than they were going to convict the president. So, I mean, this whole thing was a sham. It was an embarrassment. And the finality, as some call it, of Merchan saying, Godspeed to you as you go toward, as you go to serve as president of the United States, is really nothing more than a signal to his leftist friends, as far as I'm concerned, that, hey guys, we got away with it. We convicted this man. He is now a felon, and that will always tarnish him. What happens, and why do you think Merchan decided to allow for the audio tape of this?
It's very obvious he was trying to put on a political show, and guess what? He's corrupt. And let's just be frank about this. His adult daughter, Lauren Merchan, is a leading Democrat fundraiser. Yep. She got paid by Kamala Harris's campaign. She worked for Joe Biden. Right. Juan Merchan donated to Joe Biden. His daughter is raising money off of this case over which he is presiding. And you know this, Judge, because you're not corrupt. You're an honest, ethical judge, that when you have a kid fundraising off of a case over which you are presiding, you are required to recuse from the case. And that's not just crazy Mike Davis saying that. That is New York statute.
Yep, the canons. Yep.
That's right. Even a former Clinton judge went on Caitlin Collins' show on CNN, not exactly the vast right-wing conspiracy, and said on April 5th on CNN that Judge Merchan had to recuse. What was his response to Trump's recusal motion? Merchan said, if you mention my daughter and this recusal issue again, I'm going to throw you in prison. Yep. That is a clear violation of President Trump's constitutional rights, for which Judge Merchan must face severe legal, political, and financial consequences, including a federal civil rights statute, 18 U.S.C. Section 241, conspiracy against rights.
Okay. And that is something that conceivably the Trump administration might be able to bring based upon not just his refusal to recuse himself. And my understanding is that daughter who raised all this money, we're talking tens of millions of dollars, got a percentage of that. And besides the obvious, the whorish quality of this. I mean, it not only involves, that they're making money off of the enemy of this president, of this now president-elect, but it interfered with the presidential election. I mean, they did everything they could. But let's go beyond that, and let's talk about the fact that, if there is a violation of the civil rights law, as you say, 18 U.S.C. 241, what would happen? They would take him off the bench. What would the consequence of that be?
Well, I mean, as the Democrats like to say to President Trump, nobody's above the law. And 18 U.S.C. Section 241 is a very serious federal civil rights felony. Judges are subject to 18 U.S.C. Section 241. They're not immune. They don't have judicial immunity from this statute. And so if they've violated this statute, which I think they clearly have, I think they must face consequences, including indictment, trial, sentencing, and prison, just like they tried to do to President Trump. And let's just back up and remember with what this is. These Democrat prosecutors and agents and witnesses and judges and other operatives all over the country, federal, state, and local, politicized and weaponized our intel agencies and law enforcement to take out Trump for non-crimes. That is the very definition of conspiracy against rights.
Mm-hmm. And the amazing part of this is that, the American people at least were witness to it. And as, the president made reference when President-elect Trump made reference during his statement during the sentencing, he said, the American people watched this and the American people voted basically against this conviction. But ultimately, this conviction has to be thrown out, Mike Davis, because there was no crime. And it was, the jury didn't even tell us what crime he was convicted of. It was a convoluted jury verdict sheet that was absurd.
Yeah. I mean, think about what happened here. President Trump, like businessmen do every single day, settled a nuisance claim and had a non-disclosure agreement. I've been an attorney for almost 20 years. I've settled these nuisance claims with these non-disclosure agreements routinely. I didn't realize I was committing a crime in New York by doing this. It is a bogus legal theory. It is made up. It's cooked up. And remember, this legal theory was passed over by the prior Manhattan DA, Cy Vance, a Democrat, the Manhattan U.S. Attorney, a Democrat, the Federal Election Commission, including Obama's Federal Election Commission, and Alvin Bragg himself, this Soros-funded Manhattan DA who campaigned on getting Trump. It wasn't until Matthew Colangelo got deployed from the Biden Justice Department, the number 3 office, a senior political operative, to resurrect this bogus case. And you say it could be a misdemeanor. At best, it's not even a misdemeanor because
no, it isn't.
President Trump put this settlement of this nuisance claim in his private books as a legal expense. What the hell else would you call it? He's not hiding it. He called it a legal expense. It's a settlement of a nuisance claim, and it's in his private books.
And he said he was so clear today when he said, or on Friday on the sentencing, when he said, I labeled it a legal expense because it was. I didn't say it was an expense for concrete or for something having to do with any of my construction. I mean, it's just absurd. But, they hunted Donald Trump down. They did everything they could to make him a felon. But what practical implications does the fact that the president is now considered a felon have on him? Until this thing is reversed. And it has to be reversed. There is no basis for it. This was an abuse of the justice system. And they said, as you said, Alvin Bragg ran on it, just like Letitia, Letitia James, and say, we're going to get Trump. And they did everything they could. They convoluted the statutes. They did everything they could because after all, he was Hitler and who cares whether he gets justice or not. But they formalized his status as a felon on Friday. Yeah, it's sickening. And guess what? I think we need to formalize their status as felons with the Trump 47 Justice Department. Think about this. Judge, you were a Westchester district attorney. You were a Westchester judge. Can you imagine? Just imagine if you decided that you're going to indict President Clinton on bogus charges and you're going to try to put him in jail
before he's reelected? I mean, what the hell do you think would happen to you as a prosecutor and judge if you tried to do that to President Clinton or President Obama? They would come after you. They would throw you in jail.
They would absolutely throw you in jail. And I don't even want to talk about all that we've been through. But, Merchan, in signaling that it would be an unconditional discharge, basically said to the Supreme Court, let me go through with this. Let me get my voice on tape so we could say forever that I was the man who both convicted or ran the trial that convicted Donald Trump, and I sentenced him for a felony. That this is, I think, the biggest abuse of the justice system that we've seen. And the fact that the Supreme Court wouldn't take it up because Merchan said, I'm going to give him an unconditional discharge. It allowed them to continue, to go forward and not get involved. So, but I think the practical implication of Trump being a felon, he's not allowed to possess a firearm. And now he's got the nuclear codes. Think about that.
Yeah, exactly. He can launch a nuke, but he can't carry a handgun. Okie dokie. It's amazing to me is that Judge Merchan does this, and I hope Lauren Merchan raises a lot of money off of this sentencing hearing on Friday, because I think the Merchan family is going to need it to pay Judge Merchan's legal fees when the Trump 47 Justice Department investigates him under 18 U.S.C. Section 241.
Yep. Well, we'll see. We'll see on that. Anyway, I just think that the idea that they want to make him a felon and, that they literally hunted him down, so that he would never be elected. Their calculus was so off, and I think that liberalism, in a way collapsed, with this case when the American people went to, vote and went to the polls and they said, you know what? We're not going to tolerate that. And the American people watch the trial and they watch Merchan. And I, like you, hope that Merchan is in some way called to account for what he tried to do to Donald Trump. It was something for which this country has never seen. And as Donald Trump said in the sentencing on Friday, he said, I hope this never happens again in this country. Because as he said, it was a sad day for the country. And it was a sad day for him, and it's the first time, by the way, in history that there was a criminal trial during an election season, of a candidate. So the whole thing is very, very pathetic. Your thoughts on what the Justice Department is going to be doing on January 21st? I mean, there's so much that they can do. You expect that there's going to be a pardon for the January 6th protesters?
I hope so. I hope that happens on January 20th, and they get so much done on January 20th at 12:01 p.m. that they take a break on January 21st. But I would say this, that I hope they come in, and I hope they pardon almost all the January 6th defendants, except for the people who were the most violent, including violent towards police. But I think even those sentences should be commuted, because nothing that happens on January 6th calls for a 22-year prison sentence. January 6th was a lawful protest permitted by the National Park Service that devolved into a riot. And when Democrats start caring about the much more deadly and destructive BLM riots, all start caring about the January 6th riots.
Well, and the whole idea, Mike Davis, that, the person who died was Ashley Babbitt, that the Capitol Police, as I understand, shot, and they still will not identify who shot her. When every day, if an African American is shot by a police officer, you can't wait to find out who that officer is, so you can make sure that he's responsible criminally if there is a crime, or civilly, or just held up to the disdain of everyone who knows him. It's really sad what these people have done to America.
Yeah, and here's the worst part, Judge, is even after the Supreme Court's Fisher decision last June, where the Supreme Court essentially held the Biden Justice Department was politically persecuting these January 6th defendants by misapplying, politicizing, weaponizing a post-Enron obstruction of justice statute intended to go after corporate fraud that Biden used to go after Trump and his political enemies. They continued at the Biden Justice Department to go after these defendants. They said, okay, well, we have to drop this 1512 charge, this post-Enron charge, but we're going to just trump up other charges. We're going to stack these misdemeanors instead of, for example, giving them 4 months for being convicted of 4 misdemeanors that are up to 6 months each. They stacked them and sentenced these defendants to 24 months. There has to be accountability for this. There has to be internal probes at the Justice Department through the Inspector General, the Office of Professional Responsibility, and a criminal probe through the U.S. Attorney's Office. Heads need to roll.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think most of America agrees with that, because you know what? The American people are good people. And not only were they fed up with this liberalism that literally took America right to the edge of the cliff, but we're fundamentally fair people. And this idea of, jailing people based upon their political beliefs, and that's what it was, should never, ever be tolerated in this country. Anyway, Mike Davis, we thank you for what you do for the Article 3 Project. We thank you for joining us on all these important cases. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. And up next here on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show, I will gavel out with my closing argument. It's all coming up here on the Red Apple Audio Network.
It's the Judge Jeanine Show. This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Okay, now it's time for me to gavel out with my closing argument. I can't believe how the last couple of years have shown a light on the efforts by the liberals and the progressives to destroy a candidate who was the president and became the 47th president. They indicted him on a non-crime to make him lose an election. And yet, the largest number of individuals in any popular election voted for him to become the president of the United States. The American people watched the trial and they understood what was going on. They understood that they were literally trying to take him out like a third world dictator. In fact, he was Hitler. And the amazing thing is that this week we saw Barack Obama sitting next to Hitler at Jimmy Carter's funeral. It was all a game to them, but it's not a game to the American people. We're better than that. We don't mess up a system and try to make crimes where there are no crimes because we think someone is so horrible that he deserves to be convicted just because of who he is. And the weaponization of our government and the lawfare that was created as 75 million Americans watched the trial and still voted for Donald Trump speaks not as much about any of the players that we watched in that courtroom as much as it does about the American people and our need for honesty and fairness in the United States. The case that was passed over by 3 different prosecutors, a DA who campaigned like the Attorney General to get Trump, it didn't actually come to fruition until a guy by the name of Colangelo moved from the Justice Department to the DA's office, which is a step down in most people's minds, to make sure they got Donald Trump. In the end, Donald Trump won. And God bless him and the American people for that. I can't believe we're out of time already. Make sure you join us right back here, same time, same place, next Sunday for the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.